Bob from Bob's Workshop. A long time ago, I saw the movie Home Alone for the very first time, and that was also the first time that I ever saw a train decorated for Metra. And then a few years after watching that, my family and I went to Chicago and actually rode on the train, and it's a pretty beautiful paint scheme. So here are 4 episodes put together: 2 Williams locomotives, 1 Lionel locomotive, and 1 Lionel caboose, all decorated for Metra. I hope you like it.
You can save a lot of money if you buy a shell that also fits on a base that you already own. And even though that shell looks basically brand new, you might decide that because it was pretty cheap to begin with, and you don't collect anything decorated for the Pennsylvania Railroad, well, you might come to the conclusion that this rather drab-looking, large block of molded plastic could be improved upon. All you'll need are some leftover parts from a German Panzer kit, a Tiger 1 of course, and some sheet plastic. Do I know what purpose these additions are supposed to serve? Nope. But I do know that I don't have any roof horns for this, and it also didn't come with any handrails. So I'll need to improvise here as well. With the mounting brackets for the front and rear handrails sanded smooth, I want to cover up these holes and gaps with a little bit of sheet plastic. I'm going to build this area up in several layers and then do something a little bit different to go on top of these pieces. You'll see that later on. Here are 3 Williams shells that will fit on an FP45 frame. The top one is unmodified. The red one will become a Silver Streak model, and this one is highly modified, I would say, with additional roof detail and a different front end and a modified rear as well. Metra is a commuter rail line that operates between Illinois suburbs and downtown Chicago. Williams never made an FP45 decorated in this paint scheme, so I thought I might. It's a lot cheaper than these models from MTH, which can cost as much as $400. I've already painted the rooftop, the front, and the rear in a glossy red. Now it's masked off, and the sides are about to get this nice, I don't know, would you call it a royal blue color? And later on, when the blue is dried, I'll mask off a little stripe on the bottom and paint that white. The blue tape is common painter's tape, but the thin yellowish tape that's about a 1/4 inch wide is by Tamiya, and it is made for masking off small areas in models. And you can see the way it conforms to various lines and contours of the shell. It gives you a very nice crisp edge. It's worth the extra money. I still don't have any way to print white lettering onto clear decal sheets with my home printer, so I had to buy these from a seller calling themselves Circus City. I found these on eBay, and they weren't too expensive. This front emblem is not for an FP45, but after making a small template out of stiff paper, I was able to cut it out to match the nose of this Williams engine. A little bit of tape on the back of the decal holds the template in place until I can come back with a straight edge and knife to cut it to the exact size. After I soak the decal for about a minute, it's ready to go on the nose of the shell. I'm trimming the decals as closely as I can without cutting into the white lettering. I check for spacing, and then I'm going to use this little bottle of product that softens the decals. It allows them to conform to any raised areas, any cracks, any rivet heads that might be poking up, and the bottle says that it makes decals look like paint, and they're not wrong. It works really well. The only problem I've had is putting too much on, and then the decals can stretch and become distorted, and there's really no coming back from that. So a little is enough, and too much is not good. After the decals have dried, I give the entire shell a nice even glossy coat of clear, and that will protect both the paint and the decals for many years to come. I paid about $14 a piece and received free shipping when I bought these 3 shells from a seller on eBay. It's my fault that I didn't ask more questions ahead of time. I thought these were unpainted shells molded in a brown plastic. But when they came, I realized that they were actually in brown primer, a very thin coat of brown primer. But underneath that primer, they were lettered and striped originally for Pennsylvania rail lines. After some close inspection and some exploratory wet sanding, I decided that the primer was well applied, probably with an airbrush using model primer, and it was a thin coat, so I'm just going to clean it up before I paint it in the final colors. I painted all 3 shells in a nice glossy red, leaving the side vents painted black, thinking that I could decorate them for Amroad, which is a fictional rail line from the movie Silver Streak, a 1976 movie starring Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. I like the way this looks, but I don't really need 3 versions of the same engine. So I am going to take this 3rd shell and turn it into an F7 decorated for Metra, which is a commuter rail line in Chicago. This was not meant to be an expensive project. The shells were less than $15 a piece, and I was hoping to keep the finished project around that same amount, but then I realized how many pieces were missing. These number boards are just one example, but it's also missing the 2 horns on the roof, a lens for the headlight, and also the glass for the cab. Those pieces together, those 4, 5, 6 pieces, would cost probably $30 total, which is way more than I wanted to spend. So I'm going to make the pieces that I can. I'll probably end up ordering the horns. I might be able to fabricate some sort of glass for the cab, and I'm not sure what to do with the headlamp. But these number boards are easy enough, made from pieces of spare plastic with the edges cut to a 45-degree angle to fit in the hole on the nose of the F7. They'll be painted black, and the decal kit that I bought actually came with numbers for this specific area. The blue painter's tape is fine for big areas, but to get that nice crisp edge between colors, I use this masking tape by Tamiya, and it is very good at going over raised edges, contours, going into creases. When you pull it off, you're going to see how nice and crisp an edge there is between the blue and the red. It's a little bit more expensive, but it is completely worth it because you will end up doing less touch-up later on. Bleed through with the blue tape is still possible, but it's less likely with this yellow thin tape from Tamiya. It's good stuff. For me, this part is always a little bit nerve-wracking as you peel off the tape and wait to see whether or not any paint has seeped underneath the edges. Luckily, in this case, none has, and the edges are very nice, crisp, and sharp. I think it's mostly because of the high-quality Tamiya tape. Now I'm having second thoughts, though, about these black side vents. These new number boards fit pretty well, and after I spray paint them black, I'll apply a few decals and then give them a nice glossy clear coat. Metra is a rail system that runs commuter trains between the suburbs and downtown Chicago. MTH makes a few models decorated for this line, but they're pretty expensive, so that's why I decided to make my own custom Williams Metra F7 shell. Circus City offers these decals in O scale on eBay for about $14. I've used them before to customize a Williams FP45 shell for Metra, and they worked really well. What really helps these decals conform to the shape of the model beneath them is this bottle of decal setting solution. It softens the decals and allows them to conform to the shapes beneath them. The bottle says it makes decals look like paint, and it actually does, especially when you're finished and you apply a clear coat over the entire model. It looks good. Really good. I repainted the black side vents in a matching blue body color, and I added a white stripe at the bottom. After the decals have had time to set, I give the entire model a nice glossy clear coat before adding these final finishing touches. These homemade number boards turned out pretty well, if I do say so myself, and now they're ready to be installed. I borrowed the cab glass and the headlight lens from the same F7 that is sharing its frame with this model right now. In the future, maybe I'll find a lens and windshield for this model, but until then, it's okay if they share. These two locomotives look pretty good as a pair, but I'm liking the color scheme so much that I think I'm going to keep going. I bought this a few days ago at a trade show for only $2. In my last video, I shaped a piece of plastic to repair a broken front apron using an air fryer and various thicknesses of sheet styrene. My shell is looking pretty good right now, and I want the final colors to lay evenly across the old material and the new. To save as much detail as possible, I'll just prime the areas that were sanded through to the plastic and also the repaired areas where there's new, never-before painted plastic. I'm going to let the primer sit overnight, maybe even 2 days, and then very lightly wet sand with 600 grit sandpaper. I want the final coats to be as smooth as possible, and wet sand in between coats helps. Now the base was taken apart, sanded, and it required only one coat of gloss black to end up looking like this. It's a shame most of the frame will be covered up because it's just so freaking pretty. There's still a lot of work to do on the shell, but I can put the motorized base back together now. The trucks and motor were cleaned and lubed up off camera, and I think this guy should run as good as new. Reattaching the wire from the pickup roller to the motor is the last step to refurbishing the base. Now this can be set aside and I'll move on to the shell. Even with multiple thin coats, Rustoleum spray can end up being pretty thick, and I'd like to keep as much detail as possible. The blue sides have turned out pretty well, and I'll let this sit for a few days before painting the roof red and the new apron black. Not to jinx anything, but this project is going very well so far. The other two engines that I repainted also went smoothly, so maybe I should just stay with Metra locomotives. They do have a newer paint scheme with orange and red stripes, and those decals are available on eBay. I wonder. Finally, it's time for decals. And these are factory made and purchased from eBay. This set is made for an HO scale diesel, but this Alco is nowhere near a true O scale proportion, so the smaller decals should work well. A decal setting solution is not strictly necessary since these surfaces are so flat, but it would soften the decals and help them conform had they been installed over rivets or other raised details. The stripes that came with the HO scale set would not really work on the nose of this Alco. Luckily though, I have some leftover stripes from an earlier Silver Streak train. I actually have a pretty large and growing collection of leftover decals, and I'm going to use up a few to finish this little Lionel model. Metra locomotives have a white stripe at the base of the shell, so that was masked and sprayed. And while I was at it, I also sprayed the rear of the body a nice glossy white. I just thought it looked nice. So my lucky Metra streak continues with this Alco. And next, I think I might try to make a caboose for Metra. It doesn't make sense, I know. It's a passenger line. Why would they need a caboose? But I think I'll give it a shot. I picked up several cheap freight cars for the surprisingly low rate of $2 each at a recent train show. I kept this caboose and scavenged the remainder for their truck assemblies. The shells sold on eBay, so I may have actually made a buck or two. The worst case scenario, I broke even, and this ended up being free, which is a good thing. The lettering on the sides is easily removed with 400 grit wet dry sandpaper. Even this fine sandpaper will leave very faint marks in the plastic, but multiple thin coats of Rustoleum should fill them and leave a glossy, smooth surface that's perfect for new decals. Metra is a commuter rail line that brings people from the surrounding suburbs to and from downtown Chicago. They have one of the most attractive paint schemes of any rail line I've seen. Now, I've already repainted a few engines in this red, white, and blue pattern, and they're among my favorites. I doubt that Metra has a need for a caboose, but I just like the colors so much. And I think it would be a perfect match for this Alco I just repainted. I painted the blue sides first, then the roof red, and finally the little white stripe at the bottom. I was able to buy these HO scale decals on eBay. Now another sheet worked just fine for the Alco diesel, so I should have no problems here with this caboose. I'll leave these decals alone for a while, maybe even overnight, before I spray a protective glossy clear coat, and then it will finally be time for reassembly. There are many reasons why I like Metra so much. The movie Home Alone is where I first saw one of these passenger sets. We later visited Chicago and boarded the same train very near where Macaulay Culkin's Kevin ran away after picking up a toothbrush from a pharmacy in Winnetka. So, a movie connection, lots of good family memories, and the fact that every piece of rail equipment that I've repainted so far for Metra has turned out great are reasons enough to try a caboose. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been Bob's Workshop. Take care.